Nelson Mandela once said that courage was not the absence of fear, but it was a man's triumph over fear. And I kind of wonder sometimes that fear is this thing that we hold on to, and it stops us doing all these things in life. And I wonder if we had a bit more courage, whether as young people, as adults, as a generation, that we would achieve far greater things if we just held on to courage instead of being trapped in this cycle of fear, in this cycle of what ifs, in this cycle of reading other people's minds of what they might think about us. I think that courage is the key to growth. Growing up, I had some fears in my life. Some of them have followed me through to adulthood. One that I was scared of as a child was the dark. I used to go to sleep with a night light. It probably wasn't the coolest piece of equipment in my room, but it stopped me from crying. And I would have to have the little light on just so as I'd know that I was safe. And then I remember one day suddenly realizing that I wanted to conquer this fear. I wanted to conquer this thing in my life that was holding me back. Another fear I had growing up was of snakes. Now, I live in England. There isn't many snakes in the wild. There's not a lot to be afraid of other than the occasional cow and sheep. But I had this fear of snakes. I don't know if it came from watching too much Indiana Jones as a kid or whatever, but I would go to sleep at night, and as well as kind of being scared of the dark, I would imagine that the lines on my carpet were snakes, and that I was scared to get out of my bed just in case these snakes would suddenly come and start to attack me. And this is a fear that, like, throughout my life and growing into adulthood, I've just been like, I don't like snakes. I don't like snakes, or I do not like snakes. But it's kind of this irrational fear that comes from something that I've never really experienced. You always hear the worst stories and the worst case scenarios of what could have happened and what their potential to do is. And what does it do? It grips you, it holds you, and it stops you from ever experiencing anything. So I kind of think that me and a snake are never really going to hang out because I've always had this fear of snakes. Now these are fears in life that you kind of think, a bit silly, or I don't like snakes either, or whatever. But these are fears, and the same that we may have a fear of maybe talking to someone new, a fear of being in a room full of people, a fear of being all on your own, a fear of death, a fear of being hated, of being unpopular. Some of these are fears that I've had in my life, a fear that I would die before I was, my time, or a fear of being unpopular, because popularity was something that I held on to throughout school, and it took me to a new level, but then I realized that the new level wasn't particularly brilliant, but these are things that I kind of was too afraid to step out or to do what I felt that God was telling me to do because of these irrational fears inside of me. And do you know what it took for me to change this? Courage. That is the thing that set me off on this journey to be able to break the chains of being held down and being like a bird in a cage instead of being free to fly, was this word courage. And it wasn't courage in myself, it was courage in Jesus. Paul writes in this book, 1 Timothy, that God has not given us a spirit of fear, but He's given us a spirit of love, of power, and of self-discipline. That we do not have to hold on to a spirit of fear, but because of what Jesus did by dying on the cross, because of the freedom that He has given us, that we no longer have to be in chains to these things that cripple us and that weigh us down and that we hold on to. I remember being at school, being so petrified to tell people about Jesus and the fact that I believed in Him, simply because it might shake my popularity, or simply because people might tease me or might have a go at me. I'm challenging you today to wake up and to fill your heart with love and with power and with self-discipline, and to say, Jesus, through you, I can do this. Through you, Jesus, I'm going to hold on to that courage that you've given me. Because you know what Jesus said? He said, take heart, for I have overcome the world. Jesus said this. He said, take heart, for I have overcome the world. And if Jesus has overcome the world, it means that we are no longer slaves to the world. It means we no longer have to walk around looking behind us just in case something may shake us, just in case, a snake is going to come and jump out of the fire at you and bite you and hold onto your arm and kill you. But he says, no, that you're more than a conqueror. In fact, he says that you have the power to trample on snakes and scorpions and not be harmed. But do you know, it takes someone with courage who's willing to do that, to say, okay, Jesus, I know that this is scary. I know that I'm going to have to trust you here, but I do trust you. And I know that you have a plan for my life. And I'm just willing to just step out of my own comfort zone here and just to run with what you want to do. In the Bible, in a book called Exodus, it tells the story of this guy called Moses. Now, I like to call him Mo. I don't know why, it's just a cool name, like Yo Mo. And Mo was this man who God had chosen to use for something awesome. The Moses was an Israelite, and the rest of the Israelites, his people, were slaves in a place called Egypt. I don't know if you've ever been on holiday to Egypt. Most people come back to the UK pretty ill after they've been to Egypt. It's just one of those things. But they got the pyramids, and they got the dancing, and they got the cats. They love the cats in Egypt. But Moses had been sent back to Egypt to save his people because they were slaves. So God says, yo, Mo, I'm going to use you. You're going to go back. You're going to be the one to go and knock on Pharaoh's door and tell him, let my people go. And Mo starts to say, I don't think I can do this, God. I'm not particularly gifted in this public speaking and going before the king and saying, hey, do you mind letting all the slaves free? It's not really my thing. I've got a bit of a stutter. I'm a bit not good at this thing. And God says, Moses, he says, just go. He says, I am sending you. He says, it doesn't matter about your lack. Well, whatever is in your hand, I will use, and people will see that I am God. He tells Moses to take the stick that's in his hand and throw it on the ground, and it turns into this snake. At this moment, this is where I leave the room, but Moses hung in there, and then God says, pick the snake up by the tail, throw it round, and it turned back into a stick from that moment. And God says, look at these signs, look at these miracles. This is how the Pharaoh is going to know that I am God. And Moses goes in there with just this kind of little stick, just kind of his awkwardness and his not good at public speaking, but he goes into that room and he goes and he says to Pharaoh, let my people go. And that Moses was used by God to lead a generation out of slavery. A generation out of slavery. I just wonder that if there's people in this room today who God wants to use, but you are hiding behind excuses, you are hiding behind fears, you are hiding behind what might happen. And God's just saying, look, fill your heart with courage. I have overcome the world. Well, won't you just hold on to what I say about you? Won't you just hold on to that love that I poured out for you? Won't you just hold on? Won't you just step out? I believe that there's some people here that are hiding behind irrational fears of maybe kind of what they think they're capable of achieving or what other people say about them. And I just believe that it's time to break those today and to stop holding on to them and to start believing what God says and to start to look at your life differently. Instead of saying, I can't, to say, God, won't you give me the courage to overtake those things in my life, to defeat those things in my life, to beat those things in my life, that I don't want to just hold on to living this mediocre life and doing the same things because I'm too scared to ever do anything different. But from today, I want to have the courage and the boldness to step out and do something new. Maybe you're thinking, I don't even know who God is. Well, maybe it's going to take courage to ever find out who He is. Why don't you ask Him, God, show me who you are. God, come and speak to me today. God, come and show yourself to me. Because I believe that if we're ever going to achieve anything in life, then we have to conquer fear. And how do we conquer fear? With courage. And how do you get courage? Through Jesus Christ.